Okay, welcome to the second video in linear relationships, and particularly the graphing. So we have just looked at plotting. If you don't understand plotting, please look at the previous video. And today we're going to look at the first of two methods for sketching. So plotting, let's go back to plotting. Plotting graphs is getting a whole heap of points and putting them on the axes and drawing a line through them. Now sketching is plotting with only 2 points, and these 2 points, to find these 2 points, we have to know something in particular about, we have to know a little bit more about the straight line, about what we're doing, which is why we're spending 2 videos on it. Okay, so one method of plotting is the intercept-intercept method. We're going to go through some things. Before I even talk about what this even means, we're going to go through some little subtopics which are going to help you to work out how to do this. So before we get there, we have to tick off a few ideas. You have to understand what all of these things mean before we can get to this. So let's start off with coordinates. And in particular, how do you find the coordinates of a point? So if I have some axes here and they're labeled, how do I find the coordinates of a point? And maybe you think this is really easy. And maybe you don't, but you really have to understand this very well before you understand the next bit. So let's say we have a point here. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you want to understand how, what are the coordinates? What's the x coordinate and what's the y coordinate? So to find the x coordinate, you draw a little arrow down to the x-axis, straight down to the x-axis. And this will tell you what the x coordinate is, so it has to be 2 here. And to find the y coordinate, you draw an arrow. You don't have to actually draw an arrow, but I'm just drawing an arrow to show you where you should be looking. So that's tells us the y coordinate is 3 because it's 3 on the y-axis. Okay, so that's coordinates. What are intercepts? Let's say I have a straight line. An intercept is where the line goes through the axis. So let's say I have a line that goes, oh, that was nice, through 2 over here and 3 over here. So we've got 2 intercepts. We've got the X-Intercept, which is 3. It's where it goes through the x-axis. And we've got the Y-Intercept, which is 2. Okay. If you didn't understand those, if it was too quick for you, go back and rewatch them, but we have to move on. Now, the last one is coordinates of intercepts. Now this is the reason I did these two, because we really have to understand what's happening here. Let's look at this one. That line went through this point, didn't it? It went through, the X-intercept was 3. So X-intercept was 3. What are the coordinates of this? This point right here. What's the x coordinate of it? Well, we have to draw an arrow right back to the x-axis, don't we? But we're already on the x-axis, so we don't have to draw any arrows. We know where we are. The x coordinate is 3. But there's a y coordinate as well. How do we know what the y coordinate is? We go back to the y-axis. And we're at 0 on the y-axis. Now, I want you to I want to draw some lines and I want you to think about what are the what's interesting or special about the x-intercepts for all of these. So I could keep drawing lines, but I'll stop here. Now, what is special about the coordinates of these intercepts? Now, for each one, the x-coordinate is different. Right, this one, the x-coordinate is 4. The y-coordinate is 0. For this one, the x-coordinate is, if that's -1, -2, the x-coordinate is maybe -2.5. -2.5. And the y-coordinate is, let's go back to the y-axis, it's 0. Let's look at this one. The x-coordinate has to be -1, 2, 3, 4. X-coordinate is around -4. The y-coordinate, let's go back to the y-axis, is 0. So, from this, I want to write something down which is going to help us later on. So, for the x-intercept, the y-coordinate, the y-coordinate is 0. This is how I'm going to write it. Whatever the x-intercept is, doesn't matter what the x-intercept is, the y-coordinate of that is always 0. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through very much about the y-intercept. Let's look at the y-intercept of this line over here. The y-intercept of this, what's the x-coordinate of that? I have to go back to the x-axis. So that would be, the x-coordinate is 0. And the y-coordinate is 2.5. So actually, I could do lots of examples of this one as well, but for the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is always 0. Now, just to show you might not be convinced yet, I'm going to draw one more line, and I'm going to close my eyes and draw a line. And we will see if this is true. Okay, you can see me closing my eyes because there's a video of me. So, you ready? This might not even work, I don't know. Oh, that did not work, did it? Let's try again. But you can really tell I'm closing my eyes here. Alright, let's extend this line. Alright, now once again, pretending that's a straight line, let's look at the two intercepts. So this is, which intercept is this? That's the y. We'll start off with the x-intercept. The x-intercept is here, isn't it? X, it's where the line goes through the x-axis. X-intercept. Now, what are the coordinates of the x-intercept? -1, so where it goes through the axis, that's the x-coordinate, -1, -2, -3, -3.4, let's say. What's the y-coordinate of this? Well, I draw an arrow back to the y-axis and I get 0. So is this true? Yes, it is. Question mark. The x-coordinate was -3.4. The y-coordinate is 0. Okay, let's see about this one. What about the y-intercept? So let's see, the y-coordinate here is 4.3, let's say, around 4.3. The x-coordinate, draw an arrow back to the x-axis, and it gets us to 0. Okay, so is this true? Yes, it is. So our question mark here was 4.3, that's the y coordinate, and the x coordinate is 0. Okay, so we've done coordinates of intercepts. Now this is hugely important, and now we've done most of the work really in understanding this. So let's see, what we're going to do is we're going to find 2 points. So we're going to find the x-intercept and we're going to find the y-intercept. And so here's the y-axis, here's the x-axis. The x-intercept is going to be somewhere along here, and the y-intercept is going to be somewhere along here, along the y-axis. All right, so let's start with finding the x-intercept. And we're going to use the observation we made just then, which is that we don't know what the x-coordinate is, but we do know the y-coordinate has to be 0. So this is actually a good thing to write out at the start every time you're doing this method. All right, so if we know that the y-coordinate is 0, you might remember from the plotting video that if I know one of these, x or y, that will tell me what the other one is. So if I know what y is, I can use that information to help me find x. So let's do that. The way we do that is by, just like in plotting, substituting. So instead of y, we're going to replace that with a 0 using some brackets. Okay, so if y equals 0, let's rewrite this equation, and instead of y, we'll put a 0 and we'll use some brackets. 2x plus 4, and now we've got up to y, so that's why we're drawing the brackets. 4 times 0 equals 10. Now 4 times 0 just has to be 0, so then we've got 2x equals 10. And now I've said we're not really going to cover algebra very much here, but we'll use it sometimes. The thing is though, we don't necessarily need to use algebra for this if we don't want to. If we can see that x is a number, and if we times that number by 2, so 2 times x is 10, what number does this have to be? What number can you times by 2 to get 10? And that number has to be 5. If you want to do this with algebra, you can divide both sides by 2. Because this is 2 times x, we have to do the opposite, dividing. And we're going to get the same result. We can cancel these out, so we have x equals 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Okay, so this question mark over here, we've used the 0 to find out what this question mark is. The x-intercept has to be 5, 0. The question mark is 5. X coordinate is 5. And we can write this straight on the graph. All right. Now let's find the y-intercept. This is very similar to the previous example. The only thing is that what we learned before, this is only for the x-intercept. What we learned before is that for the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0. So we can write a 0 here, and that 0 is going to be very useful to us when we're finding the y-intercept. So why is that? Because we can substitute this into the equation. And you don't have to write substituting y equals 0 if you don't want to. I just like to write this so we remember what substituting means, which is replacing. So if y, oops, what am I doing? Sorry everyone. Now, sorry, y is not 0, x is 0. Substituting x equals 0. Okay, if x equals 0, y equals, oops, that's not what we're doing. If x equals 0, we have to find out what y is. Let's rewrite the equation exactly, and that will help us. So 2, but when we come up to x, we have to replace it with the 0 plus 4y equals 10. 2 times 0 is 0, so we're left with 4y equals 10. Now, in this one, we can't really see necessarily straight away what y is. This is a little bit trickier than the previous one. We definitely have to use algebra for this. So 4 times y equals 10. If we want to get rid of this 4 because we just want to find out what y equals. And this 4 is getting in the way. So to get rid of it, because it's timesing y, we have to divide by 4 to get rid of it. But we can't just do it to this side, we have to divide both sides by 4. So the reason we did that is because these two would cancel out. And so we're left with y equals 10 divided by 4. Now, you could simplify this as a fraction to 5 divided by 2, but we're going to simplify that even more. If you want to convert the fraction to a decimal, you can use a calculator, or you can use short division, but calculator is fine. So 5 divided by 2 or 10 divided by 4, both of those are going, if you put them in the calculator, they're going to give you 2.5. All right, so y is 2.5. Let's draw that. The reason I wanted to draw a decimal is that it's easier to work out where this is on the axis, isn't it? If I have a fraction, 5 over 2, it's hard to tell where that is. Okay, so 2.5 is going to be halfway between 2 and 3. So it's going to be here. And now, the reason we only need 2 points for this graph is because, well, maybe I'll just ask you a question. Is this a linear graph? Now, if you think this is a linear graph, you're not quite right because it's not a straight line. I could draw lots of curvy lines through here, but I can only draw one straight line through these 2 points. And that's the line that we need because this is a linear graph. It is a straight line. So let's do that. And there we are. So this is how to use the intercept-intercept method. Just to recap, you find both the intercepts. Oh, I might actually write down the coordinates of those. You find this one. You find both the intercepts by using this special fact for each intercept, which is if you're trying to find the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is 0. If you're trying to find the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0. So you use those facts and substitute them substitute 0 into the equations, and then you will find the missing coordinate, and you use that to plot your 2 points. Okay.